On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC 308 co-main event in Abu Dhabi as part of this stacked card. Of course, I'm talking about the fight between Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev. My name is James Lynch. If you've never watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles. Then I'm going to give you my prediction for this fight at the end. Some of this stuff, it may have relevance to you. It may not. You can decide that at the end. I would love to get your prediction on this fight in the comments after I am done recording this. Don't just want to pick. Predictions are much better. It's easy to pick fights. It's harder to predict them. So that would be awesome if you could do that. Let's do a quick tail of the tape like we usually do on this show. Of course, this fight rebooked. It was supposed to happen last year. They do end up rebooking it. Whittaker having to fight Ikram Aliskerov on short notice instead. So this is the co-main event. This is 5 rounds. I know there was some weird stuff on social media, people thinking maybe the fight wasn't going to be 5 rounds, but it is. And if you look at it there, the Reaper, Robert Whittaker, 26-7, Chimaev, 13-0. 33 years old compared to 30, so not a huge age gap. I mean, we often think of Chimaev being a lot younger, but just 3 years older there for Rob. 6 feet tall to 6'2", 73.5 to 75. So Chimaev can be a little bit taller and have a little bit of a reach advantage in this fight. We'll talk about him in a sec. But let's start first with the Reaper, Robert Whittaker, the former UFC middleweight champion. So I mentioned it there. He is 26-7. He's currently ranked number 3 in the middleweight division. He is 33 years old, 6 feet tall, the 73.5 inch reach. So I mentioned it there, 3 years younger. He won the Tough Smash this season of The Ultimate Fighter. That's how he got in the UFC. He's a BJJ black belt. I mentioned it there. He's the former middleweight champion. He's the first Australian UFC champion. He's got Fight of the Night 5 times. And he's got Performance of the Night 4 times. The 4 times Performance of the Night bonuses included fights with Brad Tavares, Derek Brunson, Ronaldo Jacare Souza, and Ikram Aliskerov. Whittaker never had an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros way back in March of 2009. He made his MMA debut, March of 2009 is when he made his pro debut, and then made his UFC debut in December of 2012. He is 17. He's 17-5 in the UFC with 6 finishes. Some notable wins from Whittaker include Uriah Hall, who I believe at the time was either ranked, or at least people know who he is. Derek Brunson was definitely ranked, got a win over him. Jacare Souza, he's got 2 wins over Yoel Romero. Darren Till was ranked at the time. That's a notable win. You've also got Jared Cannonier, Calvin Gaslam, Marvin Vittori, Paulo Costa, and most recently Ikram Aliskerov. Aliskerov not ranked, but obviously pretty notable win because he was, a lot of hype behind him going into that fight. And then he's got a couple losses, mainly happening at welterweight. If you look at it there, he's got losses. Well, actually, I guess he's got two in each weight class. So he's lost to Court McGee by split decision. He got finished by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson way back in 2014. And then he's got 3 losses at middleweight. So he's actually had more losses at middleweight. I take that back. Got finished by Adesanya, lost a decision against Adesanya, and then was finished by the current middleweight champion, Dricus du Plessis, back in 2023. Whittaker's had a number of layoffs and injuries throughout his career. We're not going to go through all those, but did want to mention that as well. But this year, actually, I went and looked it up. This is going to be his 3rd fight in 2024. That's the first time that's happened for Whittaker since 2014. So normally he's a twice-a-year type guy, and that's a variety of reasons. Obviously, there's a lot of travel from Australia, but good to see him take his 3rd fight this year. Didn't really take much damage in that fight with Ikram, so it kind of makes sense he's getting a decent turnaround here in this fight. Just quickly wanted to mention that Court McGee fight back in the day. Just because that was a close one. He did lose a split. Court McGee, if you go on MMA decisions right now, 8 media members scored the fight for McGee. One scored it a draw, and 4 scored it for Whittaker. I know the Whittaker and Romero fights were kind of close. That second fight especially, the fight at UFC UFC 225. If you look at the scorecards for that one, 15 media members scored the fight for Romero, just 4 for Whittaker. So again, a lot of people feeling that could have gone the other way. And then the other one everyone talks about as far as close fights with Whittaker is the Israel Adesanya rematch back in February of 2022. If you look at the scorecards for that, 20 media members scored the fight for Adesanya, only 5 scoring it for Whittaker. I thought Adesanya won that too, but people always talk about that being a fight that should have gone Whittaker's way. It was close, but again, majority of people felt like Adesanya got the win there. Let's talk about some stats with Whittaker. You can look at them there. Significant strikes landed per minute, 4.58. His striking accuracy is at 43%. His strikes landed per minute is 3.44. His striking defense is at 59%. His takedown average is at 0.80. I don't think we'll see any takedowns here. His takedown defense is at 82, which is pretty good. We'll see if Chimaev can get any takedowns on Whittaker. So yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know about the Reaper, Robert Whittaker, one of the biggest fan favorites in the UFC. Like I said, a former middleweight champion and a really good test. And hey, listen, you got to give Whittaker credit here. He asked to fight Chimaev, even though he had to fight Ikram Aliskerov when Chimaev was out. So, full marks to Whittaker, win or lose in this fight. I think that's a very badass thing to do, especially when he could have made the argument for a title shot. Now he takes a really tough test here in Khamzat Chimaev. And let's talk about Chimaev right now, who I know the last couple of years been a little rough for him in terms of, getting in the cage and a bunch of other issues, but always excited to watch him fight. So I mentioned that there he's 13-0. He's got 6 knockouts, 4 submissions, and 1 decision. He's 31 years old. I should mention there. 30 years old. He is 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. So he's 3 years younger. Will have a 2-inch height and 1.5-inch reach advantage. He's a BJJ brown belt. Currently in the UFC rankings, I believe he's ranked number 10. Unless that's changed. He's number 12, so he actually dropped a bit, probably due to the inactivity. So we got number 12 taking on number 3. He's got fight of the night 1 time against Gilbert Burns. He's got performance of the night 4 times. He's got the record for fastest consecutive wins in modern UFC history at 10 days. He's also got the record for quickest 3-fight win streak in modern UFC history with 66 days. Chimaev had an amateur debut way back in September of 2017, a fight that he ended up winning in the second round. Made his pro debut in May of 2018 and made his UFC debut way back in 2020 when he beat John Phillips by second round darce in that one. He is 7-0 in the UFC. He's got 5 stoppage wins, some notable wins. I'll include the Ikram win. That was in Brave. But, obviously Ikram's gone on to have a pretty good career. He finished him in the first round. So they do have that common opponent, albeit that fight was back in 2019. He's also got wins over Li Jingliang, who was ranked at welterweight at the time. Gilbert Burns was a good win ranked. Kevin Holland will mention just because obviously Holland's pretty notable, but, that was a 24-hour fight for him, for both guys actually. And Holland got choked out in the very first round. And then his last fight, obviously Kamaru Usman getting a win over him, the former welterweight champion. So that was definitely a notable win. He has not had he's not fought a ranked middleweight yet. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Not his fault. You got to fight who you're given. And this is going to be his first 5-round main event. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how he does in this fight. If you remember, the Usman fights were 3 rounds. The Usman fight, the Holland fight, the Burns fight. Actually, I think Holland was a 5-round fight, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that. But it only needed 1 round. Yeah, that was a 5-round fight. So Holland was 5 rounds, Burns was 3 rounds, Usman was 3 rounds. So just keep that in mind. He hasn't had any major injuries in his career. He's had a bunch of layoffs, so let's talk about those real quick. So I'm going for Gerald Meerschaert to Li Jingliang. There was a 406-day layoff. Going from Kevin Holland to Kamaru Usman, there was a 406-day layoff. And then going from Usman to Whittaker in this fight, there'll be a 371-day layoff. So Whittaker, been a little bit more active. Whittaker's fighting generally about twice a year. With Chimaev, it's been a little bit difficult for a variety of reasons, the long COVID, travel stuff. There's been a whole bunch of stuff with Chimaev as well. Chimaev's only really had 1 close fight. The Usman fight was a majority decision win. I guess we can mention that as well. Let's see how the media scored that one. I don't think anyone I remember scoring it for Usman. I thought Usman clearly lost, but see how they scored that one. So if you look on MMA decisions right now, you can see pretty much, well, actually interesting. 4 media members scored the fight for Usman, and then another 4 scored it a draw. Interesting. I could see the draw because of the 10-8 round, but I don't know about Usman winning this one. I thought Chimaev won that. Then the other fight we got to bring up is the Gilbert Burns fight, which is also very close. And you can see there just 1 media member scoring the fight for Burns, majority scoring it for Chimaev. I think that was a little bit more decisive. So interesting. Okay, so still, I didn't know that 4 media members scored the fight for Usman. Let's look at the stats for Chimaev. 5.72 significant strikes landed per minute, so that's higher than Whittaker. 58% striking accuracy, strikes landed per minute, 3.46. The striking defense is at 42. His takedown average is 3.99. That's a high number. His takedown accuracy is at 46%, which is actually decent. And his takedown defense is at 100%. Not like I think he'll need it here, because I imagine this fight is going to be on the feet, or at least for the most part. Chimaev's going to try and take it to the ground. Whittaker's going to try and keep this one on the feet, I would imagine. Let's look at the betting odds. So you can see there, Chimaev the favorite on most books here, almost 2-1. Their first fight, I did notice the odds were a little bit higher. Chimaev was, was a 2-1 favorite. I think he was like around minus 270. We can actually go look on here. It shows the past betting lines for certain fights. You'll see there the original fight. I don't know why they have Bo Nickel odds, but yeah, you look at the original one. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I guess when the fight opened initially, they had Whittaker as the favorite. So Chimaev closed at minus 265 before he was out of the fight. So that was almost 3-1 favorite. Now in this fight, you can see Chimaev still the favorite, but not quite 2-1. So that's a little bit interesting there. But look at this, Tapology telling a different story. And again, this is picks that anyone can make. You don't have to bet any money or anything. 62% of people picking Whittaker, only 38% picking Chimaev. So one of the rare times when we do the show where the betting odds are different from how people are picking. So it's very, very interesting. Okay, so how does this fight go? Look, can Chimaev win this fight? Absolutely. Are the betting odds fine where they are? Absolutely. Like, I get it. Chimaev, I think we can all agree on this. Chimaev is extremely dangerous in that first round. He nearly finished Gilbert Burns, nearly finished Kamaru Usman. My issue is Robert Whittaker is not an easy guy to take out in the very first round. We have seen him get finished, but Whittaker typically not getting in the first round. I know Paulo Costa was close in their fight, a couple fights back, but that's not going to happen. So I think you kind of know where I'm going with this. I'm going with Robert Whittaker in this fight. And there's a variety of reasons for that. And I'm going to get into them here. And again, let me know your prediction in the comments. So the reason I'm going Whittaker decision, majority of Whittaker's wins are by decision. 42% overall. He tends to get more decisions than knockouts. 38% by knockout, 42% by decision. I think that's probably a safer bet here. Whittaker's got more 5-round experience. I mentioned this being the second 5-round fight for Chimaev, but he has not gone 5 rounds. I have some question marks about that. We've seen Chimaev in 2 of his fights now with Burns and Usman. And I know people bring up with the Usman fight that he hurt his hand. I don't think hurting his hand had a big impact on his cardio. He was slowing down. Now, does he have bad cardio? I'm not going to say that, but I do think that he slows down a bit. And if you're slowing down in a 3-round fight, I tend to think the longer this fight goes, that's got to favor Whittaker. I just don't think Whittaker's going to get finished in the first round. He might get finished in the second, but I think more likely Whittaker is a veteran. He's been in there with some of the best. That I don't see Whittaker getting finished in the second round. But saying that, I also didn't think DDP was going to finish in the second round either. So take that for what it's worth. So I mentioned Whittaker's got 5-round experience. Whittaker's also fought some pretty good wrestlers before. I know they're a bit different, but I mean, he's fought twice against Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero is a very, very good decorated wrestler, an Olympian. I know Chimaev and Romero fight a little bit differently as far as their grappling and wrestling, but still, Whittaker's been in there with the tough guy in Romero, and he's fought strong guys too. He's fought, Cannonier's a strong guy. Cannonier used to fight it as big as heavyweight. Romero's fought at 205. You look at some of the other guys that he's fought as well, just going down the list. Adesanya's fought at 205. He's been in there with really strong guys. I know Chimaev's bulked up a bit. I know his days of 170 are probably done, but I don't think any of the guys that Whittaker's fought for the most part could make 170 right now. I know Whittaker himself has fought at 170, but he's been in the weight class for so long that he's definitely filled into that 185-pound frame. And I realize that Chimaev's a little bit bigger here. Kind of what I'm getting at is I don't think Chimaev's strength is anything Whittaker hasn't seen. He's been in there with big, strong guys. I mentioned it there. Whittaker's never been in the first round at middleweight. He's lost twice in the second. I think the Wonder Boy loss was in the first round, but I think a lot of that had to do with the weight cut. Yeah, he was finished in the first round. Again, I don't think Whittaker... My whole thing is, I think Robert Whittaker at middleweight is better than Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. And granted, Usman took that on short notice, but still, I think if Chimaev could not finish Usman on short notice and Gilbert Burns in the first round, I highly doubt he's going to take out Whittaker. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying it's highly unlikely. And the big thing here is the level of opposition as well. I think that's something worth noting. And sometimes this bites me. I mean, it bit me in the Corey and Umar fight. It might bite me here, but really, Whittaker has fought far better opposition. I mentioned it there. Yoel Romero, Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, Darren Till. Like, these are all guys that are notable names that are ranked opponents. Chimaev has yet to fight a ranked middleweight. And that's not a diss on him. You got to fight who you're given. But that does concern me a bit that, yes, he's had success and finished guys like Gerald Mearshart, and he's finished, John Phillips and guys like that. But, he hasn't finished high-level opposition. He just hasn't yet. I wouldn't consider Kevin Holland a high-level opponent. That's one thing worth noting. Yeah, you can beat Reese McKee and Gerald Mearshart. You can't finish Burns. You haven't been able to finish Usman. I have some concerns about that. So kind of what I think will happen is I think the first round is going to be complete chaos. It's going to be very interesting, but I do think Whittaker survives. I think the second round will also be a little bit crazy because, again, we have seen Whittaker get finished in the second round. But I think this fight will go on and go on and go on. And I think Whittaker is either going to get a late finish or he's going to get a decision. I think a decision is more likely because I think Whittaker's not going to take many risks in this fight. You can against Chimaev. He's a finisher. We've seen that. He's 13-0 for a reason. I think he's an incredible fighter. But like I said, I have some worries about the 5-round experience, the level of opposition, the strength and size of Whittaker. And also, and again, I know Chimaev's bigger, but I think strength-wise, Whittaker's held his own at 185. And the big thing, too, is the lack of activity. I mean, Chimaev has another long layoff. I told you guys that right there in this breakdown. 406-day layoff between Mearshart and Lee. Kevin Holland to Paulo Costa, 406-day layoff. Usman to Whittaker, 371-day layoff. When you're not that active, it's hard to really gauge like how good you're going to be when you're not in those real fight situations. So again, my pick's going to be Robert Whittaker by decision. I know there's going to be a lot of people picking Chimaev by stoppage. I get it. Trust me, I don't think Chimaev can't not win this fight. I feel better about picking Whittaker based off his track record, and that's why I'm going with it here. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know your prediction for this fight. This is early look. I try and do the show every week. If there's any other notable fights you want me to do, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.